Joining me now in the wake of the president's remarks, Chris Matthews, the host of MSNBC's Hardball, and MSNBC political analyst Howard Feinman, also, of course, senior Washington correspondent and political columnist for Newsweek magazine. Chris, I'm going to start with you. Maybe I missed something. I thought it was a great speech if you've been on another planet for the last 57 days, but was that what was needed tonight? Didn't he shoot really low?
Well, I think there was one bit of news there, and I don't know whether it's optimistic beyond belief, which is in the coming days and weeks, these efforts should capture up to 90% of the oil leaking out of the well. Well, that's the first I've heard of that. In coming days, we're going to have this thing capped. We're going to effectively solve the problem. Secondly, he never mentioned what power he has as his chief executive of the country to make them understand they need to put this escrow account in third-party hands. Is he going to litigate? Is he going to file an amicus brief with the class action suit and wait 7 years for this to happen, or is he really going to demand it happen? He said, I can ask him to do this. I'm amazed he just says he has that power. We'll see. And as for the energy bill, I think you hit on something important there. Cap and trade passed the House. It hasn't gotten anywhere in the Senate. And one reason it hasn't gotten there is, remember how he jumped line for immigration there for Harry Reid for a while there? He had the bill in the queue. He pushed it aside for immigration, knowing he wasn't going to be able to get immigration through or even come with an ID card as part of it as a comprehensive solution. And then he pushed it aside, and then he put it back in line again. It's not clear. Now, the hard part of this is the heavy lifting of energy transition. He said we have to accelerate this thing, accelerate the transition to renewables. That is the hardest thing in the world. That's what broke Jimmy Carter. That's what Ronald Reagan took a buy on completely, and Bill Clinton didn't deal with. It's the hardest thing in the world. He's saying, I'm going to do it, and then no more information.
Nothing specific, nothing specific at all.
It's the best thing he could do if he'd do it, and the question, is he going to do it this year? Is there going to be a bill that goes from cap and trade to something like Lugar? Is there a particular direction he's going in? He didn't tell us.
He didn't even say the Senate needs to pass the bill that's already on the table.
Well, at least something.
Howard,
you need to go to conference.
I got the feeling, Howard, that the president would have said, hey, I was as surprised by this as you were. He talked about how he had approved the expansion of the offshore drilling and said he'd been assured everything was going to go all right. And then they had the analogy, which many people expected would be more contemporary about 9/11, was instead about World War II. And he said something I found just extraordinary. It's nice speechifying, but let me read it again. Our determination to fight for the America we want for our children, even if we're unsure exactly what that looks like, even if we don't yet know precisely how we're going to get there, we know we'll get there. It's nice, but again, how? Where was the how in this speech when the nation is crying out for how?
Yeah, you said he aimed too low. I don't think he was specific enough, Keith. You talked about the energy bill. The fact is that Harry Reid has told him there aren't 60 votes in the Senate to get beyond a filibuster with cap and trade. That's the detail of it. But beyond that, I think the American people, both in the Gulf and everywhere else, wanted to know more how this was going. Somewhere between earlier today and tonight, this went from being a war and all about an assault on the Gulf to an epidemic. That's one thing that I thought was interesting. The commander-in-chief thing was lost. And I thought it was he had to confess, but in a way didn't confess enough, why he had approved offshore oil drilling and he had accepted these assurances. Who were these assurances from? Who were they from? Now, if you connected the dots between that paragraph and the one below where he said the MMS was a disaster and a mess, you might get a little bit of an idea why that had happened. I think this is a war. I think he was commander-in-chief or should have been commander-in-chief tonight. I think just if he's going to make the analogy to World War II, it should have been like Franklin Roosevelt explaining exactly what was happening in Europe, where Patton was going, where the troops were going, what the losses were, what the advances were, what the troop strengths were. Tell everybody. They've been watching television for the last 59 days. They want to know how we're doing.
Right. Even if we don't yet know precisely how we're going to get there, we'll know we'll get there. There wasn't any specificity to it. I'm going to revise my remark, Chris. I don't think he aimed low. I don't think he aimed at all about this. It's startling to have heard this, isn't it?
Well, I thought a couple things were surprising to me. Why does he continue to say that the Secretary of Energy has a Nobel Prize? I mean, it's almost gotten ludicrous. We had Carol Browner do it again tonight. I know I've mocked him for doing it, saying I'd barf if he did it one more time. But it's not important. This meritocracy's gone too far. They've named a new guy here to head up MMS. I'm not sure whether these degrees are going to help or these awards from overseas. I think it's interesting we have a blue ribbon panel now that's going to look into what went wrong. Can't we move a little quicker than that, than to name a committee commission? That's what they've done here. Another commission, and another guy mentioned for having a Nobel Prize. I think there's a lot of meritocracy, a lot of blue ribbon talk here, references, you know what they don't refer to? His cabinet. Now, this is cabinet government like I've never seen before. I asked Admiral Allen the other day, who do you work for? Because there's been concern in the Gulf as to the lack of a clear-cut chain of command, like President of the United States, Rahm Emanuel, cabinet does what they're told. No. I asked Allen, who do you work for? He says, well, I work for Janet Napolitano over at Homeland Security. And then she sort of reports to the president. And you go, wait a minute, isn't the president calling the shots here? And here he was delineating everybody's job, like Admiral Allen, and he's got this Nobel Prize guy, and then he's got this blue ribbon panel, and all these people. I don't sense executive command. And I thought that was the purpose of the speech tonight, command and control. I'm calling the shots. My name's Barack Obama. I'm the boss. I'm telling people what to do. I didn't get that clarity. And I think that command and control, a phrase that's worked its way around the White House, is essential here. He must be chief executive. He can no longer be Vatican observer or intellectual or a guy calling in experts or naming commissioners or whatever. I think he's or citing people for their Nobel Prizes. I think he has to be the boss, and he never mentioned here anything beyond BP. Like, aren't there other oil companies that could help clean up this mess? You know, we've had Hofmeister on for the former Shell executive saying you got to get all these tankers in there, all these people out there skimming. I don't sense this is a real national effort yet.
Howard.
And by the way, why not ask American people? I've said this before 100 times. He's got to get the American people, young people especially, get our spirit up again. Get people down there as volunteers. Form a new CCC. Get people down in the Gulf cleaning up this muck. Thousands, tens of thousands of people. We'd feel a lot better about it.